looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Well, happy Wednesday evening, folks. This is Scotty Roberts. Welcome to my program, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Go on over to Odyssey Radio, check it out, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio, check the schedule, see all the different radio shows they have there, and also all the different times throughout every day where you can hear repeat broadcasts of this show. So go on over, check out Odyssey Radio. And at the same time, we are broadcasting live over on my YouTube channel. And that's the video simulcast. For those of you who aren't here and you're picking this up in one of the other outlets, go over to youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And you can check out all the archives there. We have, let's see, how many archived shows? Somebody do the math for me. We've been doing this show now for, let's see, it'd be 24 months plus 1. So 25 months. How many weekdays are there in 25 months? There's roughly, well, there's 5. But how many, so figure on basically 20 days a month times 5. Times 25, I'm sorry. So 25 months at 20. So what is that? I don't do math. Is that like 500 shows, something like that? So you can come on over to the YouTube channel, check all the archives down below or out on the main page, and you're going to see every single broadcast we've done, save for maybe a grand total of, you count in Disney World week and the times that I've taken off from the show, you got about maybe 14 shows to 20 shows that we did not do due to either holidays, or I took some time off over the 2 years, or we had the family vacation 2 weeks ago. And so you can go over, check out all the archives. You'll see the chat room in the archives, but you won't be able to interact with the chat room. It's the old chat room. It's just the replay of it. But you can always leave comments down below on the videos. So go check them out. You should go way back to the very beginning when we first launched this show. I believe it was August 19th of 2019 was when we launched this show. And so go over, check it out. And I want to welcome you all here. I appreciate the fact that you would give me your time to come in here and listen to the stuff I have to say and talk about. Well, my lights turned really yellow. They weren't yellow when I first started. Not quite sure what I did there. Maybe I need brighter light, huh? Nope, that just makes me shine. So there we go. So you can see in the background here, I'm starting to unpack books. I wish you could see that side of the office. We're getting Rainey's office and studio set up over there. She's about 12 feet away from me. Well, we've got a big sofa right out in front of my desk here where we can have a peanut gallery. So if you ever want to stop by, see the show live, like Ryan Gale is local, Dave Potter is local, the Learmans, Bree and John are local, And there's a bunch of you who are local. Leslie Holker is somewhat local, about an hour and a half drive from here, but she's close. Michelle Canham-Free is somewhat local. She's a couple hours away, I think. But come on over, and you can sit on the sofa there and be part of the gallery. We even set up mics and set up a camera so you can join in on the show. But then Rainey's studio is over on the other side, and we're that whole side right over there is all books. And so I've been unpacking them all night. I wish I could flip this camera around, but there's stuff behind it that if I turn it, it's going to knock everything off the desk. But I got the bookshelves full over there, starting to load this one up, the glass front case over here, get that loaded up, and just try to sink in and feel like we're home and not living with 100 boxes stacked up around us. I'm also feng shuiing my books. So I've got I think I figured I've got about 85 boxes of books stacked here. And I've gone through maybe 20 boxes just tonight. And I've got about 6 boxes full, pulled out of boxes of books that I'm going to go take them over to Half Price Books and try to sell them for a nickel a piece or whatever they'll give me. And or I'll just donate them. And because I've got a lot of books. I've been saving books for 40 years. Guys, do you have a home library? Because when I started saving books, it was way back in my college days. And I said, I want to save books so when I have kids someday, I am able to have a library that they can fall back on. Of course, way back then, I thought I'd have a mansion by now and have the whole east wing would be the library with ladders, going up to the 4th tier and things like that. But I don't know how many books I have. If you average $10 per book, 10 books per box times 85, that's 850 books right there. And then there's some bigger boxes that have like 20 boxes in them, about half a dozen of those. So that gives you an idea. I've got close to 1,000 books just right here in this room. And so just weeding through them and trying to make things fit. Leslie says, I do too. My daughter said to me one time, you have enough books, Mom. You don't need any more. That's what Rainey said to me once. And I told her, yes. And someday I'll have time to read them all. I had John and Bree were over when we moved. And he said, have you read all these books? I said, no. I said, I've been saving books, though. I said, I've read a lot of them. So Doug Stack, member for 10 months, it says, Intrepid hardcore exclusive. I am a legend, he says. Yes, Doug is a legend. He has been with us for 10 months as a member of this channel. And folks, if you're not a member of the YouTube channel, of this channel, go over, hit the join button down below here somewhere, right below the window, and you'll see 3 ways you can become a member of this channel. And it helps us keep the lights on over here and all of that. Brianna says, Doug sucks. And she said it twice. No, she only said it once. Scott Allen right after her said, Dougie. So good to have you all here tonight. Scott Allen's here. And Elder Barry is here. And who else we got? We got Leslie Holker and Susie Q is here. And who else we got in here? I know Master Finn is here. We're going to be talking about Master Finn a bit tonight because there's some things since I put the post up for tonight's show. Some other things that I want to get into tonight, and Master Finn is really the animus behind that. We got Michelle Canham-Free. How you doing, Michelle? Good to see you. Love your posts, by the way. So let's see. Who else? Barbie D is here. I'm way far away, she said. Oh, well, you can make a trip up and you can come and sit on the sofa during the show. So fly me to Wisconsin, says Field Guy, and I will. I drove it from your neck of the woods, Field Guy. It's only 20 hours from where you are, thereabouts. And who else we got in here tonight? I saw Dave Potter early on. I think Dave Potter is here. Uncle Dave. He's around. And I'm just looking to see who all's here. I want to say hi to those who make it into the chat room. Steve Clark is here. Yeah, I was looking a little yellow. It looks like it's corrected itself I don't know what that's all about. I got blue light on up there, and that's not shown because we got the overhead lights on tonight. Because Rainey's over there still working. She's on the phone over there. She's working in her studio. And we got Flynn over in his room. Behind that wall is his bedroom, and he's working on cleaning his room. And so the girls are down here in their room, which is way over there. Well, it's one of their rooms. Ellie's is upstairs next door to Mom and Dad's room, but nobody wants to be upstairs when we're not up there. So, and upstairs isn't like the upstairs of a house. It's like this house is like a tri-level, kind of thing, a twin level kind of thing. So it's just up on the floor above us. Kitchen, living room, couple of bedrooms, couple of bathrooms. So that's where they are. So they're watching TV in there, I think. Dave Potter says, "Hi, Rainey," says Dave Potter. Hey, Dave. Hey, Dave, she says. Did I see Morgan Snow is here tonight? Good to see you, Morgan Snow. Glad you're in the chat room. And, of course, Brianna, I didn't actually say hi to you, but it's good to have you here. You've driven down to Corpus Christi Corpus Christi from Wisconsin. Yeah, it's not a bad drive. Texas, it's about from here. I think it took us 19 hours to get to Dallas. So, and that was in the Tesla. And so we were making good time. There's John Packy 247. Good to see you, brother. And I found this book, by the way. I wanted to make mention of this and maybe just make a quick, take a look at this book. If any of you are into old books, I collect old books. I happen to have also sitting over there. I can't reach it from here. It's an old copy of The Robe. Do you remember that movie? It was with Richard Burton. And it was the story of the robe of Jesus that was kept by the centurion, and the story that he goes through. Now, I've got a copy of that, and the copy I have is from the late 1800s, if I'm remembering right, and I'm mixing it up with another book. And I looked it up, and that book I bought for 10 cents at the barn. And Brianna, and John, you'll know this, the big barn over at the Heritage Center. I bought it for a dime over there a few years ago. I looked it up. That book, in the condition it's in, is worth about $300. So I've got that. That's going to go in the glass case. But this book, this one's a little more beat up. It's called De Omnibus Rebus. And it's got 100 illustrations in it. It says right on the tattered spine. And this is from London, John C. Nimmo. And it says right here on the spine, it's got the date of 1888. And I found this book, and that's what it looks like. That's what these old Victorian, I'm trying to hold it so you can actually see it without the light glaring off of it. And it's entitled An Old Man's Discursive Ramblings on the Road of Everyday Life. And I thought I would pick this up, and it's by the author of Flemish Interiors. I have no idea what that book is. But if I were to open this up, and something I like about old books, it's finding, oh my God, I don't think I noticed this before. I think this is autographed. I'm looking for the name of the author again. I don't know if this is autographed or if this is the person who bought the book. But you see that signature right there? And it's got the date, 1888. I can't make out the name. It's a W.A. It could be Washington. Something Washington. O.J. Washington or something like that. But I thought this would be interesting just to take this. I have no idea what this book is about. Oh, see, it's got these cool plates in here like this. That's pretty neat. That's a pasted in plate. It's got the preface here for what the book is about. But I thought it would be interesting to pick this up. It's got the introduction. The Omnibus Rebus, Chapter 1. He says, it starts off right here with an illustration. It says, education's a fine thing, and not to be considered too dearly paid for at 8p in the pound when we come to experience its results. I asked a schoolboy the other day what was the meaning of the first half line of the 10th satire of Juvenal. Any of you know that? You know the answer to that? Omnibus in terris was the line. He replied, the boy with the most unhesitating alacrity, we shall soon have omnibuses in all lands. If the youth was right, all I can say is that the remark is a very shrewd one on the part of the Roman satirist, who, if I remember rightly, confirms his prediction in another line of the same satire where he says, servus curo portatux eodem. Those of you who know your Latin, you can figure what that said. I don't. And he goes on and on and on. And I just started flipping through this book to see what he's got in here. And what were the ramblings of an old man? The squeaker. He's got the guileless purchaser. Round numbers. Matches and matches. The theory of dreams, he says here. Let's see what that is. Dreamland population. The study of our kind. Now I'm just reading page headers here. Real and ideal. The theory of dreams. This is interesting because it goes through this book, and up here in the headers at the top, it's kind of telling you not what the section is. It's telling you what's on the page, contained in the page. And the quaint and original author of Reglio Medici asserts, in one dream I can compose a comedy, behold the action thereof, apprehend the jests, and laugh myself awake at their conceits. And from the pen of that thoughtful writer, Lord Houghton, we have the following reference in that abnormal condition of the mind, in sleep, which contentedly accepts the most grotesque and violent incongruities. It says, it's the nature of the life of dreams to make all actions our mental springs. However unnatural, discrepant, and strange be as the unfolding of most usual things. There you go. I'm done with that book for tonight. I hope you got something out of that. So that's an interesting old book that I found in my box full of really old books. This is from 1888. You do the math on that. That is, what is that? 100 years to 1998. 1998 was 33 years ago. It's a 133-year-old book. So you can see that. And I think it's signed by the author. I can barely read his writing. So that's very interesting. It's a little beat up to be in prime condition, but there it is. 123 years, says Field Guy. Was it 123? Not 133? Shows you how I do math. The year I was born, says Brianna. I'm guffawing now. Thank you, Brianna. Let's see. You said earlier your keyboard keeps glitching and deleting what you're typing. Well, yeah, there you go. You deserved that, I guess, huh? Let's see. What else we got in here in the chat room? Steve Clark had to take a dog to his vet this morning. Swollen right eye. Packy says, John says, Susie Q, let me get this straight. Playing with your kitty keeps you up. LOL. John, I know where your terrible mind just went. So anyway, I'd have Rainey come over and say, but she's on the phone too. She's talking to her aunt. And so let's get into talking about some things tonight. Now, you know, by the title of the show that I put up tonight, that this show was going to be a show about, we're continuing on with the Jesus Potter Harry Christ series, talking about really the historical Jesus, whether or not Jesus Christ was somebody that we can reliably say was an historical figure. Now, I believe he was, but many times what we do, and you see how the light's changing, by the way? It just turned yellow on me again. I don't know what does that. I don't know if it's leaning in and the camera wants to reset the lighting. There you go. See, it just reset the lighting. And so this whole question, because many of us come from either Christian backgrounds, Judeo-Christian backgrounds. Many of us were raised Christian. Some of us still are Christian. And sometimes it's good to look at some of the facts that are out there and ask questions. But sometimes the questions mess with our belief system and our faith system. What do we do when that happens? What does it take to draw us back onto a faith path? Why would God, the Almighty, make something that is so important about our eternal destiny, our eternal souls, something that was so hard to come by, that we had to just rely on believing it, when there's so much out there that goes against the belief system, that makes the belief system look kind of wonky? And so this is why I dig into these things. This is why I want to look into these things. I want to know things. If I'm going to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, that he rose from the dead, I want to know why. I want to know these things. I don't want to just abandon knowledge and accept something by faith, especially when it's of such great import, supposedly. So, do you ever find yourself in that position? Some of you don't even consider the faith issues. Hold on. Whew, sorry. Not enough time to mute that one. So, Teresa said, to see you, Scotty Roberts. Missed you last night. I wasn't here last night, Teresa. That's why you missed me. Thank you for missing me, though, if that's what you meant. Dave Potter says, if your faith is true, if your faith is true, questions won't change it. If they do, then your faith was not sound. Now, that's a question I ask myself, Dave. In my own personal faith story, I became a born-again Christian when I was 11 years old. And I maintained that all through the rest of my life. And that's what took me. I went into the church after that. I went to Bible college as a result of that a few years later. When I was 7 years later, when I was 18, I was 17. So 6 years later, I went on to seminary. I went into youth ministry. And this was something that was a deeply held faith of mine. Yet I had my questions about certain elements of the faith all along the way. We've talked about many of those. Sometimes the series I do on this show are the questions that I ask. My whole book on the Nephilim was a question I had about that topic in Scripture. And so my faith, was it true because I questioned it and abandoned it? Could the questions I have or the answers I was not finding, and I address you with this, Dave Potter, because my faith has changed, or it has been hijacked, or it has been pushed off the track a bit. I've allowed things to do that because I ask questions and I don't find the answers that match. And the answers I do find are showing me other things. It makes me question the history. It makes me question, if the history doesn't work and doesn't fit. I had my old seminary professor, Dr. Charles Ailing, who I admire and respect greatly. He's the man who first put me on to the theory of Moses being dated to the time that I've dated him, and Hatshepsut, the queen, and so on. And he wasn't a big firm believer of the Senenmut theory, but he placed the date there, and the dates work out there. And so he told me once when I was writing some of my books, he says, remember, Scotty, he says, whatever you find out historically, you need to filter it through the Bible to make sure it matches the Bible. And if it doesn't, then you're off. And of course, he was speaking from a faith point of view. Dr. Charles Ailing is a historian. He's an archaeologist. And I said, that would seem disingenuous to me, Doc. I said, because, I said, wouldn't you have to step outside the faith of box and look back in and make sure your faith matches to what you find historically? How can I say that history is wrong if it doesn't match the faith? And so these are the questions I had. And these were the things that I had problems with. And I've said this before, when I abandoned certain elements of my faith, the one thing I could not abandon was Jesus. I had some people ask me to write a book on Jesus. And I said, I can't do that right now. I said, because I don't know where I stand on Jesus anymore. I said, was he the Savior? I don't know. Was he a prophet? Was he a good man with good teachings? He didn't found a religion. His followers did. So was Jesus the Son of God is the big question that comes out of that. And then you start looking historically and you say, there's not even evidence that he ever existed historically. At least by the historians. There's evidence because his followers were there. How do we know what his followers created? Especially when you see the story of Jesus matching stories of the earlier Messianic God-man characters, like Dionysus we talked about. Who was the one we talked about the other day? Gilgamesh, some of the others. And so, yet, there are things that get thrown in your path that make you say, that's extraordinary, and that is what I want to talk about tonight for just a little bit before we get back into the Goin pagan and looking at the pagan God-men, as they were called from the mystery religions and Gnosticism and so on, that matched the story of Jesus. Only they came before he did. So, Matt Finn says, the narration is not great, but the information is that the link, Master Finn, that you sent me on the Shroud of Turin? Because I want to talk a little bit about that before we go much further. And by the way, I do want to give you all the link to call in tonight if you want to call in and contribute to the show. We're going to be getting into this topic now. And so if you want to contribute to this topic, I would love to hear from you. Okay, that's the link. And I wanted to talk about this. And guys, I do not have a way to show you stills from this video, and I didn't go through and pull things out and write down information. I'm going all from just memory of some of the things I saw in this video. I will say this, when Matt Finn sent me that video, I clicked on it either last night or early today, and it started in the middle. So I obviously somewhere along the way had started watching this a long time ago. And I don't know how long ago, because this comes from earlier this year. This video is about the link that Matt Finn put up. It's about the current studies, the scientific examinations of the Roman Catholic relic, the Shroud of Turin. Now, folks, if you don't know what the Shroud of Turin is, I'm going to type the word in here, the words, Shroud of Turin. Okay, what I want you to do, because I'm not set up to show you photos of all of this, although I could, the Shroud of Turin is a linen burial cloth that has what some have claimed to be the image of Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus Christ, on the cloth. Now, of course, this has gone through scrutiny for not centuries, but at least most of the last 100 years. There's been so much examination of the cloth. Yeah, Dave Potter's right. If you don't know what the Shroud of Turin is, you've been living under a rock. And that's the truth. So I can show you a couple of images of the Shroud of Turin by sharing my screen. And there's a couple of things I want to show you that I pulled from this video that were kind of revelations even to me. Now, here we go. Here's what I'm going to do. I am going to take and share my screen with you, and I'm going to show you just some Google searches that I've done here. All right. Let's go share screen. Boom and boom. Now you'll see me off to the right. See, I'm way over here. You can probably see my hand. I'm behind the ad blocks over here. But you can see the screen here. So now I'm going to move over here. And I've called up those of you who didn't know off the top of your head what the hell the Shroud of Turin is. Here's some pictures of it. It is a relic that is said. I'm going to find the larger pictures of this. It's a relic that looks like this. All right, you see this picture over here on the right? This is what the Shroud of Turin looks like. I'm going to drag this image into Photoshop over here. And I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Take a look here. So what it's got on here, you see, it's trying to play music. Hold on. What site is trying to play music on me? Hang on, guys. Something's trying to play music while I'm doing this. Okay, Shroud of Turin. Let's go back over here. Now you see this. This is the image. You see the man's face and hair, his chest, his stomach and his arms, and his legs. It goes all the way down to his legs. Now, the way the Shroud of Turin was laid out is that it was started at the feet and they wrapped up to the top of the head and folded over to the backside, or vice versa. Let me fit this back on the screen. So there's the shroud, and these are all burn marks. Chapel where it was held had caught on fire and had burned portions of this like hundreds of years ago. So they say that this is the Shroud of Jesus. Some of them say, here's the full picture of the whole shroud. That looks like this. Let's fit this on the screen. Fit on the screen. There it is. So it's laying on its side. Here's the head and the back side of the head. So the shroud folded over the top of the head. And this is his back going all the way down to his feet and his front going all the way down to his feet. So this is the shroud. It's made out of a linen. And so what was unique about this was the face that was on the shroud. They found when they were taking pictures of it and developing photos of this shroud, you see how it looks here, like this, and you can see how the face looks. Well, what happened when they took pictures, they found in the negatives, what happened? That image turned into this, a positive image, which means the image on the shroud is a negative. It's in negative form. So now this is the image of the face on the shroud with the closed eyes, the nose, and so on. And I've heard it described that the way the face looks kind of mushed and the nose is broad is that the cloth would have laid over the nose and draped back over the face. And somehow this image got on there. Now, I saw some of the new science they're looking at on this, and they were showing that he was laid face down. So that might account for some of the way the nose is shaped here and other portions of the body. So this is the Shroud of Turin. And they've done some rebuilding digitally the face on the shroud. And they came up with, they did all the mathematics, of course, and they came up with a face on the shroud. I'm looking for the one that is the actual face they came up. I think it looked like this. There you go. Now it's got a watermark on it, but you see it. This is the face, they say, that exists on the shroud. Right there. So now the believers that say that the shroud was the shroud of Jesus are saying this is what Jesus would have looked like. This is the man whose face is on the shroud. This is what that human being would have looked like. And you see the shroud is over here on the left, and the face that they've reconstructed from the shroud is over here on the right, and how they match up. And it shows the blood stains and so on the head wounds and things like that. Now, he looks pretty clean here. I know the biblical story said he was more beaten than any man. It said his face was so beaten that you wouldn't recognize who he was. So this is a cleaned up version, I think, of the face on the shroud. What the man would have looked like is what they were after with this. And so now this study on this video link that Matt gave us, that study, and here's another picture of what they say that face on the shroud looks like. Let's call that up. So here is another picture of what they say the face of the man on the shroud would have looked like. And so that gives you an idea. So you say, wow, he looks just like all the depictions we've seen over the years. Long hair, beard, so on, and yada, yada. Now, they've got him looking pretty white here. Remember, he was a Middle Easterner. He was a Judean, indigenous to Judea. He was a Semitic man. He could name his Jewish tribe. And so this is a man who was a Middle Eastern Jew at the turn of the first century. So when you start looking at these pictures, you start getting an idea. This is what was on the shroud, okay? And so I started looking at, and they have also tried to decipher the way the body is laying on the shroud and why the hands are perfectly covering the genitals, like you see here. They're showing kind of a early 3D reconstruction of the man who's on the shroud. And so there's been a lot of question and a lot of study of this man. And there's somebody who I want to get on for an interview. His name is Barry Schwartz. Now, Barry Schwartz, and I've talked about him briefly in the past. I'm going to stop my screen share here. I've talked about Barry Schwartz here. Let me do this to reset the lens. He is a man he's a Jewish man. Back in 1978, he went with a team from the Jet Propulsion Laboratories, JPL, were invited in by the Vatican to come and take a look at the Shroud of Turin and do an examination of the shroud, the first scientific examination done. They took DNA samples, but they had very limited contact with it. Now, Barry Schwartz, being a photographer, he was brought in and he said, really? They want me to shoot pictures of the shroud? He says, I'll go to Italy. He says, free vacation to Italy. He says, I'll be able to tell you in 10 minutes if it's a fake or not. And what was very interesting, he said he got there, and the first few minutes of looking at the shroud, he said, I could tell you, he says, I had no axe to grind with this. I'm a Jewish man. He said, I looked at the shroud and I go, whatever this is, it's not a faked image. It's not a forgery. It's not painted. There's something about this. And so he did all this photography work. Now, he eventually founded a website called shroud.com. And it's Barry Schwartz, and that site has been going since either the late 70s or right around 1980, in the early 80s when he founded the website, and all kinds of research information over there. So you can go take a look at that. It's just shroud.com. Now, this video that Matt Finn shared with us, now I've been kind of ignoring the chat room because I was digging around trying to show you some photos. Yes, Matt, this is what I want to get into. He identifies the thorn crown, nails in the hands and feet, the attire that he was wearing, and many hidden details. This is what's so unique. Some of this new information that they found by looking at the Shroud of Turin. Hey, Rainey, would you flip that back on? That's just kind of, my camera lights are all set for that light being on. Okay, let me readjust that camera. There you go. Thanks. And so they started digging through the information they have. And they started trying to find out, there are anomalies on this shroud. And Matt Finn mentioned them there just a minute ago. There are some anomalies. They wanted to find out, what are these things? What are these shapes we're seeing? Why do things look different? Why do the fingers look elongated on one hand? Why is the foot twisted a different way? What is this? What is that? And what they found, first of all, Barry Schwartz found that, now I don't have the mathematical numbers in front of me, and I'm going off the top of my head. This is going to be an approximation. It was something like this. An image or pigment to adhere to linen of that type, it requires to be settled into the fibers by about, I think it was 14 microns. And that's enabled to for the linen to be able to hold adhered pigment to it. If this was painted in any way, it has to be at least 14 microns deep in order to do that. What Barry found was that the image on the shroud is only about 6 or 7 microns deep. It might have been 4. So I'm going off the top of my head. I don't have this information in front of me. Barry, when I get him on, I'll get him on again if he's still doing interviews. We'll have him come on and we'll have him talk about this. But so one thing you knew right away, it wasn't pigment that was put on there. Now, as they're looking at the shroud, you're going to see blurry areas in it. And you're going to see, and it's like this. This guy who was talking on this video, he likened it to this. Have you ever had an x-ray done, guys? Let's say you had a chest x-ray done, or an arm or a shoulder or a hip or whatever. When you're looking at that x-ray with your doc, you can see shaded images from the backside. Like if I had a x-ray of my heart taken, you're going to see my ribs, you're going to see the internal organs, and guess what? You're going to see the spine. On the other side, it's going to be a shaded figure on the spine because of the depth that they send, that they set the x-ray to take the picture. But you're still going to see a shadowy figure of the bones on the other side. And so what he said on the shroud, he says what he's seeing is, what you're seeing in these blurred areas are elements of the other side of the body that are coming through. So what did that tell him? That told him there was burst of radiation, like gamma radiation or some kind of radiation, that would be able to create that image on the shroud. What made it adhere to the shroud when there was no silver nitrate? Like we know the chemicals needed to produce photography. I don't know. But it was very interesting, and they started seeing other anomalies that you don't see on the surface. I want to show you this shroud again. Let me share because there's a picture I want to show you from the video. So let me share my screen one more time with you. And if we go back over here and we look at the shroud, something totally different. Here we go. Here's the image on the shroud. Now, if you blow this up, this isn't very sharp, but all the images I've seen of the shroud, I never noticed a crown of thorns. I thought I saw what would look like scars and things like that. You can see even here when you blow, that's a little too low resolution. But you get the idea here. You would see, now if you look at that image of the shroud, you don't readily see a crown of thorns. Now, something that was very interesting, they examined these tight areas above the brow of the man on the cloth. Now, mind you, I'm going to tell you this. I want to say this to you. And I want to I'm going to stop sharing so you can look in my eyes on this. When I look at the Shroud of Turin and I see that image, the jury is out for me. There's no way to know that that was Jesus, I'd say. How do you know that it's Jesus? Seems like a miraculous image. And of course, everybody's come up with everything possible to try to debunk that this could be an image of Jesus. Now, they even did a DNA test on the cloth. And it was dated to, guess what? The DNA said it dates, or the DNA, the carbon dating, said it dated back to something like the 1500s. So it's a fake. It's a forgery. The only problem is that they only allowed the fibers to be taken for testing. If this was the shroud, it'd be just from the edges of the shroud because it doesn't conflict with the image. And so they took fibers from the edge of the shroud and they tested them, carbon dated them, looked for DNA. Well, you know what happened over the centuries is that shroud was handled by everybody from the sides, the edges. So you're picking up the DNA and anything that could be carbon dated off of all the hundreds of hands that touched that shroud by just the edges. So they went back later and they were allowed to take a couple of fibers from the interior of the cloth. Guess what? Dates 2,000 years old, thereabouts. They found pollen from Judea, what is now Israel. They found all kinds of things on the shroud. But the thing that really got me in this video was some of the details you don't know anything about until very recently by looking at certain artifacts in the shroud. When I went, here, I'm going to share my screen again because I want you to see this. So when I look at this shroud, I don't see I don't see a crown of thorns. Now, what's interesting is this. I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to pick up this right here. All right. Now, you got to look tight. Well, I can blow this up a little bit. This is the video that Matt sent you. Now, if you look down here in the bottom left, you see the eyes and the bridge of the nose and the forehead and so on. And the white is the blood. This is now a negative of the negative. The shroud is in a negative image. It burned as a negative under the linen. So when they are developing negatives, they saw this. And so there's oxidized, it's blood. And it looks kind of squiggly and all of that and flat and so on. Well, what they started doing was, and you can barely make these things out, but they started examining all this very tightly. And here's what they found. There's an outline drawn here. Look at this. There's leaves. They're like laurel leaves almost. But it's a certain plant, which I don't have in my head. There's a plant, and it's a plant that they identified. It's indigenous to what is now the area of Israel. It would have come from that region. It's got berries on it, you can see here, hard berries. And this plant is also thorny. And they found that there weren't as many thorns on the front side, but there were many thorns on, this is the back side, over on the right top here. And you can see here the thorns. It's showing some of the thorns. So they plated this to his head. You see the thorns sticking out here and here and here. These are all in the image. And you can see down here in the lower right, these are the blood stains from the thorns that punctured here. Now, here's the question I would have to ask you. If this is not a fake, it's not a painting, it's an actual image, let's get over that hump. And you're going to see more about that if you watch the video. If this is an image of an actual man who was crucified, did they put a crown of thorns on every man who was crucified? No. That was not normal procedure if you study Roman crucifixion. Why is there a crown of thorns on this guy? That's the first thing that makes me stop and say, why is that there? So you've got this crown of thorns, and the crown of thorns, different than we've always depicted it in art. It has leaves on it, and it has berries on it, and it's got the thorns. It almost looks like holly leaves and berries, but it's a thorny plant. So what do you do with that information when you see that? You go, wait a minute. This is somebody who was crucified. The wounds all show that. He was scourged, whoever this man is on the shroud. But that isn't all. They found, I want to see if I can, I'm going to look and see if I can find in this video. Oh, by the way, here's the plant. If you can still see that, that's the plant. And this is what the plant actually looks like. So this is what you're seeing. Look at these pictures right here. Let me blow this up. This is the tracing of what's on the shroud over here on the left. See these berries? You come over here. This is the image. You see the leaf down here, the berries, and so on. Why would somebody paint those in? Well, it's not painted. We know that. It's not faked. But the image that was radiated onto the linen picked this up. This is the actual plant that you can still find over there. It's indigenous to that region. So let me go back over here because I want to get out of this for a minute. We're going to come back to this because I want to find something else here. Let's stop the screen share. What does that do for you when you see that? Brianna Learman says, what if the crown of thorns was still there and they tried to cover it with the berries and leaves to make it look less gory? It's possible. Or the people who put him in his tomb. But what's interesting is that the crown of thorns is still on this person. On this piece of fabric. Now, there's other things that are very telling, things that you don't think of. And Matthew Finn, I've got to ask you this question. I think I posed this to you when we were chatting a little bit today, and we maybe didn't get that far with it. It's got the nails. The nails are still in the wrists. The nail would have been put in about this point in the wrist. Not the hand, like people think, in the palm of the hand. Just rip right through by the weight of the body. They were put in about here and up through at an angle. And you see one of his hands on the shroud. It's in this position. You see his thumb. I think it's I'm trying to get the exact way it looks on the shroud. He's bent in like this. You see his thumb and his fingers are like this. You know what they say that is? That is what the hand does. When you put a nail through there, it makes the hand do this. And so they found the nails are still in there. They've identified the square cut nail with the pyramidal point on it. They're still in the hands and the wrists on the shroud. And I'll scroll through and show you some pictures. They're also still in the feet. But they also show movement. They say what's very interesting is that you see the hand is like this in one that you see on there, but then you also see shadow images of the hand turning to a fist, like that. You see another one where the hand moves, where the feet move. And they say, whatever happened here, it would be as if you're getting an x-ray taken and you move your hand across your chest while they're taking the x-ray. You know what you're going to get? A shadow image of a hand moving in that moment. If you do it right there, it's going to catch a couple of seconds of that, or microseconds of that. So what they're saying is it's got evidence of whatever this burst of energy is, radiation that created this image, it moved the body. The body moved. The hands that were crossed rolled up to a fist. The feet moved. So it was very interesting. Now, me, somebody who has questioned the historical Jesus, and I've always questioned the shroud. I found it to be a cool, mysterious, magical piece of cloth that maybe there's not much to this. What is it? We know it wasn't fabricated. What created it, we would ask. But now they're starting to find these artifacts in the shroud that show the nails, that show the crown of thorns is still there with the leaves and the berries from that plant. They've identified the plant. It's on the shroud. They also found that he wasn't naked. He looks naked in those pictures, but he's wearing, think of that Egyptian, here, I'm going to do it this way and kind of show you. You know, when you would see some of those Egyptian paintings and they would show somebody, and pardon this, I'm just doing this really quick. You would see somebody wearing something that looked like this. Okay. Let me show you. Okay. You would see them wearing a kind of a skirted garment that looked like that. Had kind of this pyramidal cut up the front. Well, the body on the shroud they have found is wearing a garment like this. And not only is he wearing a garment like this, it's got a belt with a buckle that looks like that. That's holding it up. Not only is it just a belt, it's a belt that they're finding on the thing has this patchwork on it like this. It's snakeskin. It's a snakeskin belt with a metal buckle that's pictured in the shroud. You can't see it readily in the images that are there, but you see it when they do this deep examination of the shroud. So apparently, this is what he wore to the cross. Because you know what it's got? It's got blood stains that trickle down and they stop at the belt and they trickle off this way and down. So the belt was on him while he was bleeding. Whoever this man is, while he was bleeding during crucifixion, was wearing this type of garment. Now, on top of this, they had, and I'm doing this backwards and from the back side, they had a linen piece. Okay, I've done a big T there. A linen piece tied across here, and it hung down, and it also hung down on the back side. And the imagery comes through very clearly. They think this is what they used to help take him down from the cross. There was also a piece that shows the buckle of a linen piece that was on here that they later removed and sewed back onto the edge. They had torn it off the edge to create something to bind him to take him down, and they had sewn it back in, and the imagery is also, you can turn the imagery of this little strip that's been put on the side and sewn back on, you turn it sideways and it matches this imagery in here. So I don't remember the timing on that. But what was interesting is that these things existed at all. You got the crown of thorns. You got nails still in the hands, the wrists, and the feet. You've got movement of the body from whatever the burst of radiation there was that created the imagery. You start asking, is this Jesus? Well, he's got the crown of thorns. He's got the wounds. The wounds are the same. Now, with the spear in the side, what was unique about that? In a Roman crucifixion, you know what they did? They would walk by. Roman crucifixion was really death by asphyxiation. Because as you hung there on the cross, when they would drop the crossbeam into the support, it would dislocate the shoulders. And so your shoulders are dislocated. Then they would push your knees up and nail your feet in. So it's constricting your diaphragm for breathing. The only way to breathe was to pull up on the nails and dislocated shoulders and push up on the nailed feet to be able to extend your diaphragm to take a breath. So this was one of the, sorry, I keep doing that just to reset the cameras doing wonky things tonight. It's possible, Matt, I looked at that. Did they dress him afterwards? Well, what's interesting, he would have had to still been bleeding when they dressed him. Because remember, the blood was trickling down the chest or the stomach area, but it stops at the belt and moves. It pools where the belt was, right on top of the belt. So that was there when the image was created on the linen. So you've got this. Now, the next thing I found really interesting was, and I'm thinking they had to have put this on him after the fact. So maybe they did dress him. Maybe they didn't. There's this thing called the tefillin, and it's also known as phylacteries. Do you know what those are? Have you ever seen pictures of modern day of Jewish men praying at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem? And you see them, they've got these little black boxes on their foreheads, about an inch by an inch by an inch. And they're tied on with a leather strap. They're prayer box. They have prayers in them. And then that connects to a strap on the left arm that they wrap around the arm and around the fingers. Here's what they found on the shroud. There was another, up into there. Okay. On the left arm, they found the Jewish prayer strap, the tefillin, wrapped around the arm, and it's there in the imagery on the shroud. You don't see it right away until they show you where that is. They also find that there was the little box on his forehead, but it had drooped down and it hangs a little bit, I think, down above the bridge of the nose. And you can barely make this stuff out. So, Oh, it's over to where the video is. Matt, if you could throw that. Joyce, what we're talking about, you might be on a totally different thing. I'm just assuming you're asking a question about this. There's a video that was put out in the recent months. I think it was in June of this year, where they have done much more intricate examinations of the Shroud of Turin and found some interesting artifacts. Now, you know what else they found? They also found on different parts of the body little chains. I'm not talking about big slavery type of chains that he was bound with. Like little chains, like necklace chains, bracelet chains, little chain links with pins on them, decorative pins. I think one is up here or was up there. They're in different places on the body. Now, do you remember the cloth known as the sudarium? Fewer people know about the sudarium. Sudarium is the Roman word for basically hand towel. There was another cloth that was found not together with the shroud, well, maybe originally, but after centuries after the time of Christ, there was this cloth that emerged called the sudarium. And the sudarium is this blood-stained cloth that's about this big, something like that, and it's got blood stains all over it. What they found is that the blood stains on the sudarium match the blood stains on the Shroud of Turin to shape and size and dimension. But they also found on the sudarium that there are markings that showed that there was one of these pins that had been on there at least the time of the creation of the image, the moment of the flashpoint of whatever created this image on the shroud. There's the little chain there. The chain hangs below the eye a little bit from the brow. And what they believe the sudarium is now is that it was a piece of fabric that was folded up in several to make a cushion, because they're showing that the pressure points on the body that are on the shroud and so on show that this happened while he was laid front down, not back down. And the sudarium had been put under his forehead to support his head. So it soaked up all the blood from here and around the eyes. And they had taken this pin, this decorative pin, and pinned it, the sudarium, to the shroud, so it would hold in place. It's the face covering, Matt Finn says. Yep. While carrying him to the tomb. Exactly. And so there's these decorative pins. Now, I wanted to look at this because I wanted to find a couple of these elements to show you what they're talking about here. Let's see if this is what shows it. Okay, yeah, this is the sudarium. Okay, I'm going to show you something here, guys. Let me share my screen with you again. If I can get to the right tab. Share screen. You got to go through this, sorry. And share. We're going to go back over here to this video. Now, this is a picture of the sudarium. And you can see it's a mirrored image here, from here to here. So one of these is the image of the blood stain, and then it's folded so it gave you the mirror reflection of it over here. Now, I don't remember exactly how this lines up, but here's where some of the jewelry is. Let's see how much it gets into it. Now, it shows the body here, laying face down, with the crown of thorns as it is revealed on the shroud, with the hanging leaves here. You can see it over here on the left, the hanging leaves and the thorns and the berries. Well, they had taken and they put this sudarium folded up underneath the face. And I'm going to advance this a bit. Now, here you can see this imagery. Over on the left, you see the chain that's hanging here, and it hangs down over the eye. And that, if you try, I looked and I looked and I looked, I'm trying to find the places where you see this, and you can see right here the chain link. Here's the sideways link. Here's the other link, the sideways link, the sideways link, and so on and so on. All the way, here's more of the links up here. This is coming from, and this piece up in here is what they're saying is this bent decorative piece with a pin in it. That it was pinned, the sudarium was pinned to the linen on which this image was made. So that's one of the chains that you see. It's a decorative, like a brooch and a chain link necklace or something like that. Trying to get to it here. There they show it much closer up. You see the link over here on the right, the chain, you're seeing it here as well. They've drawn around that to give you an idea of what you're looking at. And so the sudarium here, there's another shape that is, and I don't know where it is in here, but there's a shape in here that matches that. Here it shows the diagram of the blood and how it was folded. They're showing how this thing was folded into pieces and where you're seeing things in here. I don't know what's what here. This is a piece of the shroud you're seeing here in the gray that's showing something in there. That's it. It might be the chain link. I'm not sure. And they're showing this is how the sudarium was folded and how the blood would have seeped into it and so on. So what you're looking at, again, is this. And you can see the chain on the right here very clearly, right here in the image on the shroud. So what you've got here, and here's how and this is how the thorn would have pierced the sudarium. The thorn would have pierced, and then when it was unfolded, it left a puncture mark there, but the thorn is still over here. When it was unfolded, those are the puncture marks it would have left. So let's move on here. Now, they talked about the hands, and this is where you see the bent fingers here. This is the ring finger and the pinky finger, and you see there's a bit of the thumb that comes out here, and the forefinger and the middle finger, how it curls up, and there's a fist of it up in here, because it took this dual image because the hand moved. There was like a jerking movement at the moment of the flash of radiation, and they found this in different places all over the shroud. That's the level of the right hand, and so on. Oh, here it's showing it. This is how he would have been holding his hand. There you see the fingers. You see the fingernail right here. You see the thumb here, the bent fingers. And then how it, and then it moved from this position to this position. And so you see this over on the right, and then also the fist, and you see right here, the bend between, there's the thumb again, and because the hand moved at the moment of whatever this burst of energy was. So here's the face again. Blood stains here, laying flat. I don't know what we're looking at there exactly. Might be more of that. Oh, here's the nail. See how they've got it drawn in this kind of light orangey color? This is the nail in the wrist. You see the fingers here. If you look back a little bit or squint at it, you can see there's a severe close-up of the hand with the fingers. And this nail is right in here. And you see it. I'm sorry, it's over here. And you see it here. They've got it outlined where the nail is. And here's another shot of, there's the nail sticking straight up. I don't remember what part if that was the foot or the hand. And so you got all this little imagery that's going on. Oh, and you see a shift here. This is showing the same shape and how it shifted on the hand. Here's where the nail, see the hand here extended out. And this is where the nail was, and now it's up here. It had two different images, or it shifted backwards. So now this is the tefillin, the little box that would have been worn on the head. Here's how it would have been worn on the arm. And so what they show here, see all these orange lines? This is just showing you all the ways that this tefillin was tied, and you see it wrapped around. Oh, this is the hand. So you see the strap has moved too from this position to this position. See if I can get off of that. Here's the left arm. See, here's the wrist with the blood. The white is the blood. The arm going up here. And the white again is blood stains. But look at this. Here's the tefillin that's wrapped around the arm. That is the Jewish prayer strap, if you will. And then the little box, and a close-up, you can see the box is right in here. All right. There's more of the tefillin. Let's see what we got here. What's he showing here? Oh. Here it is. Here's the chain that's hanging down from the crown of thorns area down to in front of the eye, and there was a medallion on it. And the medallion shifted in the movement. Now here is around the waist. This isn't the belt, but this is the piece of linen that was tied around the waist. And they're showing sections of it that were then taken and put back over here where they were torn from. There's the buckle. It's on the side piece. I'm looking to see if it shows the belt, the snakeskin belt. So I don't know. Maybe this is as exciting as I say. This guy is really dry to listen to. And I hope I'm not making this dry and hard to listen to. But this is, to me, this is an interesting. This is the nails again. It's showing the nails. It's showing how the nails moved and how they laid with the linen, how they were in the feet, and how the linen cloth did this over the point of the nail, how the foot shifted. So, and there's the nails again. And then again, the body, just showing how all of this happened. And I did want to find that image that shows the skirting that he was wearing. Oh, here you go. This is the belt right here, and buckle that they say is on the shroud. That pattern shows on the right here, or its outline. That's around the waist. Oh, I don't know what I did. Anyway, there you go. That's all I'm going to do with that, because it's really, oh, look at those. Wow. How do you get rid of toenail fungus? Yum. So let's go back over here to our show. Let's stop the screen share. Okay, boom. There it is. I hope that wasn't too difficult to look at. Now, what's very interesting about all this to me is that it's got artifacts in there. First of all, you didn't know it was on the shroud to begin with. They were caught in the matrix of the radiation that created the image. Now, it's also an interesting thing. They said the whole image, the front and the back of the shroud, because remember, it was wrapped over his head and down his back. They said the whole imagery, by the mathematics, the micro mathematics of this, the burst of radiation came from internal the body, not from the outside. The mathematics and the direction of all the imagery shows that there was a burst from within that burst and created this image in an instant. And it moved the body jerked or something, and you see some of the multiple movements because of that. So, to me, let me ask you, where does that leave you thinking about this shroud? Now we've got a guy who's dressed like that, who's got the prayer strap going up and the tefillin up on the forehead. He's wearing the skirting, the belt. There's a snakeskin belt. Why is he wearing why is Jesus wearing a snakeskin belt? Is that something they put on him after death? As Matt suggested, maybe that's or was speculating. Except the blood flow that was flowing down his chest, and it would have flowed down the chest, not when he was laying prone on his face or his back. The blood would have flowed down his chest when he was hanging upright. The blood flow came down, hit that snakeskin belt, and diverted. That means he was wearing that. Whoever this person is on the shroud was wearing that garment and that belt. Yeah, Dave, exactly. Dave Potter says it would be an amazing fakery for someone in the Middle Ages to create all those details. It would be amazing for somebody in the Middle Ages to create the shadowing from the other side of the body showing through. It would be amazing for somebody to show the shifting of the hands, because they didn't know what radioactive imagery was back then. How could they imitate it? So there you go. I know I've gone overtime, way overtime tonight, and I didn't even do justice to the presentation of this. I just happen to find it very fascinating. And you know what it does for me? It makes me say, like Barry Schwartz said. Barry Schwartz, mentioned him at the beginning, the JPL photographer that went back in the late 70s and shot the initial pictures of this. And he says he's still a Jew, he says, but he's convinced that the man in the image on the shroud is Jesus. When I see those details, the crown of thorns is what really got me. Because that was not a part of Roman crucifixion. And the shroud dates back 2,000 years. So it was from the day that this happened. So is this the image of somebody who had a miraculous burst of radiation that created this image? You know, when I was in seminary and in ministry, we used to ask questions, and it was like, how come Jesus never left an image of himself? And never had a painting done. Nobody ever knows what he really looked like. And the answer was always, well, because people would start to worship the imagery as opposed to worshiping the Savior or God, which is not so far from the truth. But what if he did leave an image of himself? What if why would it take 2,000 years to find this? Oh, we found it in its rudimentary stage 500 years ago, something like that. But why would it take up until now, 2,000 years later, to start identifying all the other little artifacts? Why would he have a crown of thorns when that's not common to crucifixion? Unless, of course, somebody made it all up and they would have had to make a radiation type of an image 2,000 years old. Couldn't happen. So what is it? What are we left with? What are the conclusions we draw? It's still subjective. We don't know for sure. But you've got the earmarks. This is a Jewish man. Jewish prayer strap. Remember, Jesus wasn't a Christian. Jesus was a Jew. Now, did he have this stuff on him when he was crucified, or was it added afterwards? Was he allowed to pray? Was he allowed... When they took him in the garden, he was praying. Did he have the little tefillin on? And the straps? The strap around his arm? Wound around his arm? Was he wearing those at the time? When he was beaten? Would those have fallen off or fallen to pieces? Scourged, when he was crucified, might he still have had these things on? Remember, they didn't throw him in a holding cell and let him sit there and clean himself up. He was dragged from one thing to another to another. Was he still wearing these things at the crucifixion? Because of the crown of thorns, he had a strap across his forehead with the little prayer box. But the crown of thorns was draped over it. So, was it there first? And the crown of thorns was added to his head. This is something he wore. He had on the skirting. He had on a snakeskin belt with a metal buckle. There were the little chains that were added. They were pins that were put in to hold the sudarium in place, to cradle his face while they were putting the shroud on. I think the clothes were probably his. Maybe not the jewelry, maybe not the belt. I think the idea that Jesus was impoverished is a ridiculous claim. Could he have owned a belt? Sure. Remember, dude was a carpenter for 28 to 30 years. So far as we know. Isn't this the carpenter's kid? They ask in the Gospels. They knew who he was. Did he have money to fall back on? I don't think he was rich, but most poor people I know have belts. Was this a belt he bought in the marketplace at one point in his life? Was the belt maybe 10 years old? I've got belts that are 10 years old, believe it or not. So was this something he owned? Was this something he wore all the time? We don't know. When they hung him on the cross, was it something he removed? Obviously, he had it on when he bled up against the belt. So these are all questions. You're hearing me kind of musing about it. And I don't have all the facts in front of me. I can't speak like a scientist. But I can tell you something. This, John asked a question somewhere. Said, Brianna, and I'm looking for where that is. John asked a question. Let's go back and find John's question. Hey, Belinda, by the way. Didn't see you there. It says the king put the crown on his head. Yeah, king put the crown on his head. Herod had the crown put on his head. Let's see. I'm looking for there he is, John. Was there a body in the shroud when it was found, or just it was just the shroud? John, just the shroud. And just the sudarium. So there was no body in the shroud. And it was, what did they say? In the biblical story, it says this. It says that they laid him in the tomb. And when the women came and saw his body was gone, it said the empty grave cloths were there. And the facial cloth, and it says, and the cloth was folded up alongside the empty grave linens. So the sudarium is even mentioned in Scripture. He was folded up, laying aside. It doesn't say the linens were all over. It said it was just there and they were empty. So no, there was no body in the shroud. And the shroud was taken probably by his followers and passed on. And it was sometime very early in history, after the time of Christ, where this was passed on. It ended up in Spain, remember? A church in Spain. And Herod Antipas, they were political enemies, Herod and Pilate. Yep. And they weren't in league with each other, Matthew, Herod and Pilate. Pilate couldn't give a good goddamn about Herod Antipas, other than that he had to placate him. Rome, Pilate represented Rome, Who was Herod Antipas, the puppet king of Judea? He was an Idumean. I don't think Pilate thought highly of Herod at all. So, yeah, Doug, game changer. So, interesting stuff, folks. Go watch that video. Matt Finn, if you've got that link handy, if you will paste that, please, one more time in the chat room so people can look at it. Now, the guy narrating this video, the video is what? It's about oh, I shut it down. It's like a half an hour long at least, maybe 40 minutes. And the guy speaking he's reading obviously from a paper, and he's talking about the radio and blah, blah, and he could just put you to sleep. He's boring as, like I said, he's about as animated as a rock. But the information is phenomenal. So go watch that. Spend some time watching this. Some of it gets a little thick. If you're not following it, if you're doing something else, you're going to look up, you're going to hear something, go, what the hell is he talking about in scientific terms? But it's well worth, excuse me, it's well worth watching. So there it is, folks. That's all I got. Watch it tomorrow, Leslie. It's dry in presentation, but rich in information. So good night, John. John saying good night to everybody. So, folks, I want to thank you all for being here. The information is fabulous. I don't know what to do with this. You know why? Because it overturns some of the doubts I have in a very subjective way, because I can't prove this was Jesus. But I look at that and I say, with everything I've heard about this shroud and so on, is this something that, let me step out on the branch, is this something that God left for us to be able to see at a time when it was necessary to see it and see the details? It's a good question. It's worth asking. What does that do? Let me ask you this final question before we go. If you found that there was a way that they could prove that this was actually an image of Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ, as the Bible calls him, and the image could only have been made by miraculous events, bursts of radiation, what would that do to your thinking about Jesus? It's interesting stuff. So think about it. All right, guys. I got to get out of here. Michelle Cannon-Free, that's all right. You were driving. It's okay. We understand. In all science, Dave says, in all science, always have an open mind to new evidence being presented. There it is. So my mind is open on this. And I got to tell you, it's intrigued me to a point where it's got me thinking again. So let's leave it at that. Guys, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me your time. If you're not a member of the channel, join the channel. And until tomorrow night, you know what? Live long and prosper.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hi, my dad. so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.